Okay, obviously you have a campaign plan, know your district, this is really important. What are the boundaries, what's the voter turnout, what were the recent election trends, why did the last candidate win or lose, who got what endorsements and why, how many people are registered to vote, what was spent, what issues will improve people's lives, and who gave to the winning or losing candidates, who are all the big donors. For this session, mainly boundaries, voter turnout. In Wisconsin, we have something called the VAN, which is the voter file. Do you know what it's called in New York? The voter file that you can buy?
It depends from county to county.
Okay. Well,
But the one I will say, when you do get the voter list in New York State, you want the most comprehensive list they got. And they tend to want to just give you,
sure.
You want the voting history, every single election you can get. They have a lot more layers to that voting history than they'll tell you about.
Sure. So yeah, normally, I can just speak for Wisconsin, we have a government accountability board where you can go purchase the voter file.
Right.
You can also go to the Democratic Party and purchase a very detailed voter file, right?
You can't do that in New York.
You can't do that in New York. The party won't sell it to you?
Mm-hmm. For the most part, they don't gotta be, they ain't gonna sell it to the Green Party.
Huh, interesting. Well, Wisconsin's a little different. We don't have such an adversarial relationship there. Because they endorse us.
New York's not the most partisan state in the country.
Huh, that's interesting because it seems like it's just a pretty much Democratic Party
a long
state.
time for total tallies. Actually, my tally went up by 70 votes after the final
Right.
count following year.
Most of the state is actually Republican in
Also,
New York.
yeah.
Well, you talk about, first of all,
New York.
in New York City, you've not elected a Democratic mayor in 20 years.
Sure.
So that's one problem. And then of the 57 county executives in New York State, probably 51 of them are Republican. And the Senate is controlled by the Republicans. So there are 2 million more Democrats than there are Republicans, but most of the Democrats are located in New York City, and the problem is New York City doesn't vote, which is a big problem. The turnout in New York City is much, much lower than the rest of the state, and so that...
Sure. So you have to hold that thought just a second. So you have to get a comprehensive voter file, right?
On computer disc.
Or wherever, right? The old way was a disc.
Right.
Now, some parties have it all in an online database, right? That's very sophisticated. Hopefully the Green Party will do that because it allows you to sort by age, gender, geography. The more narrow and specific you can get, the better. You need to know the expected vote, right? And that's the first number you have to figure out as a candidate. How many votes do you absolutely expect to be cast in this particular race that you're running in? That varies, right? So you look at the past 3 elections in that area and make sure to account for changing redistricting lines and things like that. Or if there was something really extraordinary that happened, for instance, in Wisconsin, we had a recall of our governor, and that doesn't happen ever. You don't want to have really far out elections. You want to have elections, for instance, in the spring, if it was during spring break or whatever, or however local you can get, so it's exactly the same. In this worksheet here, field math, number 12, your expected vote is the average number of voters of 3 similar past elections. So you take the 3 past elections, say one election, 16,000 people turned out, another one, 17,500 turned out, another one, 18,000 turned out. You add them up and divide by 3, and that'll be your average. It's not perfect, but you have to come up with a number somehow.
So you add the 3 past elections, and you wait.
Not necessarily the past election, but the one that's most similar to yours. So in the spring, Was there a gubernatorial candidate in the election? Was there was it a presidential year? Because that always bumps up voter turnout. Go ahead.
I mean, we tend in New York, we tend to look at the exact same election.
Okay.
Because the voter turnout is so dramatically different. And so if you're running for county legislature, what are at least the last two, what have been the exact vote totals?
For that seat.
For that
Absolutely, yeah,
particular
I agree with that. What I meant is, was that seat up during, say, presidential year or some kind of controversial ballot initiative or something like that might have turned out more or less voters. Then you figure out how many votes do you need to win. It's 50% of the average you just calculated, plus one. Now, you don't want to just have one extra. In a partisan race, if you were not facing challenges, if you had equal funding, equal access to the media, as, say, your Democratic or Republican challenger, then 52% of the vote identified in your camp should be okay. But Greens face unique challenges that the other parties don't. And people, when they come into the ballot box, may change at that moment what they vote for various reasons. In Wisconsin, we had straight ticket voting. I don't know if you have that in New York, but it was...
Just by habit.
Okay. You could go into the ballot box. This happened in Ben's race. And the first question was Democrat, Republican, Green, Constitution Party. And you can mark that and leave and never even look at who's running in what race or anything. So 25% of the people who voted in my husband's race for state assembly, checked Democrat and left. Some people even thought he was running as a Democrat, right? Because they're not informed voters and they decide, oh, he's good, so he must be the Democrat. Of the people who actually cast a vote for a candidate in his race, he won. So it was a straight ticket voting that really switched it. In New York, you don't have that, right? But people probably go into the ballot booth and then look and think, oh my gosh, can I really do this? And vote Democrat and leave, right? Even though they may have intended or told the pollster they were going to vote for you.
I mean, I don't know about Wisconsin. One thing that's different in New York than most other states, virtually every race is partisan. There are hardly any nonpartisan races outside of villages. Villages are nonpartisan.
School boards.
School boards in certain locations. So that's where we've won in New York State in those nonpartisan races.
Right, right. So you probably need to shoot more for 60% of the vote, right, identified, if you actually are going to win the race, to account for all kinds of things that happen, and I don't know if you vote on electronic voting machines, but there's weird stuff. Yeah, there's weird stuff that happens there too, right? So you never really know what happened. You need to know how many people you need to have vote for you. But you don't have time to talk to everybody in the whole district. So you have to find out who are your voters, what is your universe. In my school board race, there are 253,000 people in the district, but only 22,000 vote. So how do I contact all those people? Well, once you figured out on this sheet your win number plus a comfortable margin, 2%, 5%, 10%, whatever you feel, you got to figure out your contact goal, which is should be 75% of the expected voter turnout in a two-way race. Now, in a three-way race, maybe you might want to revise that, and you want to figure out your door goal. So, what's the smallest district race that people would face here?
Well, in New York City, it's much more massive. In upstate, you might have a couple hundred voters.
Oh, okay.
What's the lowest in New York City? Probably.
Assembly, the state council.
How much is city council?
No, I think the assembly is smaller, constituency wise.
So
How many?
assembly's 50,000 voters,
Yeah.
80,000 voters.
I have a pretty small assembly district, it's about 70,000 roughly.
Okay. So, 70,000 is too many probably to knock on every door. unless you spent a year campaigning.
Especially in New York City.
Yeah, with all the apartments,
Oh,
yeah,
that's-
yeah. So, in a place like Madison where the city council's 11,000 people and like maybe 2,000 actually vote out of that 11,000, you can knock on every door, and they do. Actually, they try to knock on every door 3 times, which in assembly race in Madison, it'd be 50,000. And then you gotta drive from farm to farm in Wisconsin, that takes a long time. So the best thing to do is to talk to somebody directly, but if you can't, you have to figure out your universe and how many doors or phone calls, if you can't do doors, you can do.
Did you,
Yeah,
okay, sorry.
that's okay. So you wanna prioritize your likely voters. 1 are people who always vote. 2, sometimes vote or never vote, right? Don't talk to people who don't vote.
Why not?
Because, well, it depends what your goals are. If your goal is to win, you never want to talk to people who don't vote.
Well, I've spoken with so many people that never voted, and
The number 1 predictor of whether they're going to vote is whether they voted in the past. It's the harsh reality. People will say they have the best intentions to vote and then not vote. Maybe there's,
Have you won elections? Have you gotten more than 10% of the vote? Okay, this is what this workshop's about, is how do you get to actually winning?
but the ones statistically, the ones that always vote, I've noticed, are the ones that are gonna vote for their party lines anyway.
Not
The ones that
necessarily.
sometimes vote will probably vote for someone like, people like us.
if they see you, a dynamic candidate who gave them a phone call and knocked on their door, then maybe they
I
should.
mean, Howie, he came the closest in New York State so far in a partisan election. Got 49% of the vote. Basically, about 10% of the people voted all the time. So rather than focus in on, 40,000 voters, he was able to concentrate on 4,000 voters and went after those. And that's why he got 49% of the vote.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would be surprised. I've run like over 10 years, and I have people in my own buildings that they voted for me. But then I go to the voter file and check their voting history. They didn't vote at all. They didn't
Yeah.
bother going out to vote on election day. So people lie to you. They'll
Yeah.
lie to your face. They'll tell you, I voted every election because they're trying to get a favor out of me or something, and then they don't vote.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you have to really be this harsh, but you have limited finite resources and time, and if people don't want to take the time to participate in the democracy, they don't really deserve your time at this point, right? If you're an organizer and you're just educating people, that's a different story, but you want to win or you want to get as many votes as possible. That's your job as a candidate. So if you're at an event and this also actually disproportionately affects young people and people of color and low-income people, right? Because they are less likely to vote and they are less likely to actually have candidates show up to their events because of that perception. Okay, so what if that is too big a number, which it very well may be, right? Too many doors to knock on, too many phone calls to make. And you can figure out on this page 13, voter contact plan, you've got your vote goal, and then you've got your door goal, or phone call goal, actual you talking to somebody, which is 75% of your vote goal, okay? You take that number, and then you think, how many times do I actually want to contact this voter? How many times do I want to go to their door? How many times do I want to call them on the phone? 2 times, 3 times, it depends. Maybe 1 time if you're lucky, right? Be ambitious. Doesn't mean you're necessarily going to meet it. So say 2, okay? Then you take the total doors you have to knock, your door goal, times the number of desired passes, right? So if you've got 10,000 doors you want to knock on or 10,000 phone calls you want to make, and you want to contact everybody twice, that's 20,000. Now, this is a contact rate of 20 doors per hour or phone calls per hour, right? That might be ambitious. Every time it says doors here, you might want to change it to phone calls. And if you have a good voter file, it will have the phone number of the voter.
Or you can purchase them.
Yes.
Which the state party has done.
I always purchase the voter file.
Right.
It's
Well-
just that you have to do it.
There's one thing though,
Yeah.
that I do not like, is the robocalls. Please
I agree. No
do
robocalls.
not have robocalls, especially Green, and you know, Mark, I've said this before, at several meetings, it's not a good idea to have a robocall. If a person
Well-
wants to contact me, let them contact me in person.
The only thing I would say about robocalls is the night before the election, a robocall that says, I'm so-and-so, this is a public service to remind you that there's an election tomorrow, is okay. Now, people differ on, but they work. I mean,
My rule of thumb is try to do robocalls 2 weeks out, because that last week they're getting so many robocalls. Even if you're a live person on the phone that last week, they start yelling at you. You say, no, I'm a live person. I mean, but they're getting 15, 20 robocalls a day in the last week in New York State.
Okay, so if you have volunteers that can help you out, your volunteer hours can supplement the amount of time you need to be contacting. And then you want to think, how many mailings do I want to do? Yeah.
So so you got 20 doors per hour. Well, you said it might be a little bit high. Let's say 15 doors per hour. That's 4 minutes per door. What's the longest? This person loves you. So other than getting the contribution out of them, a yard sign, a house meeting, gonna make 50 phone calls. Other than that, what's the most amount of time you should spend with the voter?
Are you asking me?
I answer.
Oh,
I would give you my answer.
I would say 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Hi,
I
here's
would have
my
gotten
spiel.
10 on the exceptional case.
Really? Okay.
Howie Hawkins has spent an hour.
I know.
And I.
Jill Stein might too.
Oh!
Everybody knows it too.
Look, if somebody wants to talk to you, if they're going to vote for you, they're going to vote for you. They won't be offended if you say, look, I'm a hardworking candidate. I got to talk to your neighbor. Are you going to help me by talking to your neighbor? They're not going to be offended. But really, you have to discipline yourself to go and knock on those doors of people who haven't heard you, who maybe,
What about, I don't see it, but what about in front of the supermarkets? Everybody, like, where I live, my neighborhood supermarkets, everybody out there handing out, yeah, I know you got, I know you.
Waste of time.
How's the waste?
Yeah.
Waste of time.
Why is that?
Because you have no idea who
You're
you're
talking to non-voters.
You're not identifying voters, talking to non-voters. That's, just not a way to campaign.
But
Not
Let
if
me-
you want to win the election.
yeah. Let me
Some
talk
people
about the
have no idea that
doors.
you're running, though. Some people have no idea that you're running.
It doesn't
Oh, you
matter.
know you're running? Yeah, you got my-
This campaign, this is a workshop on how to win the election. So there are other ways to run elections. This workshop is focused on how to win the election, how to get 50% plus one of the votes. There are other ways to run elections, you just don't win. So this is an election that is focused on winning. So that it's going to be different than some of the other
Yeah.
discussions.
Well, you should be aware, from my experience, others' experience, knocking on doors in New York City, at least in the boroughs I know, approximately Manhattan.
Right.
If you knock on 100 doors, and this goes for apartment buildings, private houses, and family. Overall, if you knock on 100 doors, you're lucky to get 10 or 11 people who are home. This goes for weekends, evenings, late afternoons, whatever you do. So, kind of back
Sure.
on that end.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And the doors I'm talking about are doors that are in the voter file that are identified voters.
Yeah,
And usually it says strong Democrat, lean Democrat, or strong Republican, lean Republican, or undecided, right? Usually it says that, it says the person's name, all
Not
these
in New York State, but go ahead.
Okay, well, you guys,
How was that identified?
So, were they voting Democratic primaries or voting Republican? No.
the party,
We can get information like when they last voted and what their registration is. Well, just because they're
Let me see if I
registered
can pull
Republican doesn't necessarily mean.
But you can get information whether they voted in the Democratic primary.
Right.
If they voted in the Democratic primary, you vote in every Democratic primary, you're more likely to be Democratic voters.
let me see if I can pull something.
If they only vote in the general election and they vote every year, but not in the Democratic primary, they're weak Democrats.
But that's, open, so.
But that's
not New
information
York.
we have to parse.
That is New
information
York.
out.
New York, but it's not an open primary where someone can cross over and vote.
Yeah, do they show up when the Democrats are having a primary though? You can get that information.
Right.
It's more work.
It is, because.
But if
we
you're
get the
trying
last
to
time-
narrow down who you're talking to, this is what you gotta do. And in terms of the doors, that's why I think in New York City, is why New York City does so much worse than the rest of the state. I think you gotta do more phone calls. Because
Same percentage, even worse.
well, I found different when I'm doing in New York, but you do have to, even if you develop another strategy,
All in that.
you have to keep track of who you're talking to. Just handing out literature, you're not getting any votes that way.
That's right.
We
Because,
may, but the concentration of votes is gonna be way less.
If you look at the races, like, Gloria's races in New York City and Lynn Serpy's races, they have had much more focus on individual voter contact. That is why they've been able to get in the 20-25% range. The normal races we do, you stand at the subway stops, you stand up the bodegas, you hand out literature, that's where you get the 1 to 5% of the vote. So this is about how do you move up to that next level.
So I pretty much knock on the door, or 20 doors in every neighborhood, behind such and such, right out the middle.
But with a voter list, knowing who's the registered voter and having identified who is the likely voter. So you're talking to people who are going to actually vote on election day.
So I get the disc, put it in, print it out.
No, print it out. You got to first sort it. You got to recruit somebody who can do data analysis for you, and you got to make sure you get the disc. You have the complete voting record, and you have to start doing sorts. Give me every name who. Here are 5 elections I'm looking at. Give me the names of people who voted in at least 3 out of those 5 elections. So those are my prime voters.
okay.
That's how I do it.
Let's see. I can
It was
show
showing on
you.
the computer then, right?
I'm going to show you Vote Builder if I can find it. If I can find my login, I mean. But I will show you what it looks like.
And while we're with it, I mean, sort of one general rule of thumb for winning elections, you need 7 voter contacts with each voter that you're going after. So that's like 2 door knocks, 2 phone calls, 2 literature drops, and 1 mail-in. You never win unless you do at least 1 targeted mail-in to the district.
Okay,
That's
so
like
I need a new
54,000.
password.
Well, that's what's going to take you target it. Who you target it, not to all the voters, you target it to who are the likely voters that you
Right.
determine you're more likely to win. And you figure out how much you can afford to spend on a mail-in, and you come up with that number, and then you figure out who are those 15,000 voters I most want to get to. If you can't do it, it just means you're much less likely to win. So we're talking about what are you going to do, what do you need to do in order to win?
All right.
Not to mention New York State, if you raise over $1,000, you actually have to go check member this, check member that, this.
Yes, you have to keep very good records.
New York State, election laws, finance laws are horrible.
Oops. Come on. Okay, anyway, so all I'll tell you is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party have excellent voter files, right? Hopefully the Green Party gets to that point. And part of the disadvantage that Green candidates face is they don't have the kind of information that the other parties have. And that's
So one of the things people should be doing in every election is preparing for the next election.
Yes.
And so you got to make sure that all the data we collect on the voters is kept in a permanent file. So when we start the next election cycle, we have created our own data history for these particular voters in that district.
Absolutely. So you want to keep good records so you help the next person, and also so you help yourself if you want to run again or for some other office. It's really important. Okay, so what works? We talked about some possible tactics. The things that, if you have to talk to voters or touch them 7 times during a campaign, here's the most effective to least effective, right? You talking to a voter, one of your volunteers talking to a voter, either at the door or on the phone. Phone calls, right? So making phone calls. Mailings and then lit drop, right? I absolutely am a very strong believer that you have to have an excellent mailing in everybody's mailbox who's a voter. You don't have to send it to everybody in the district, just every voter. You have to have at least one. If you don't have one, you're not even a player, right? So if you figure out how much it costs to send one mailing to everybody's mailbox, and you can't do that, you probably may want to reconsider running, honestly, because most voters will never know you're even there until they show up and they're like, oh, there's a Green Party person running. Too bad I don't know anything about this person because the media blacked you out. You didn't have money to buy your own TV commercials and things. The only way they're going to find out about you besides actually you talking to them directly is probably through a mailing. And a lit drop is a mailing that is dropped off at somebody's door by volunteers.
One thing I must say about lit drops, a lot of people don't realize this, do not leave it in the mailbox.
No, it's illegal.
Do not.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. But honestly, lit drops, and I'm guessing in a place like New York, they don't really work. If you're in these buildings, how would you get in and drop everybody's door?
You don't. You can try to put, you can't. You can try to take Scotch tape and put it on the front door.
Yeah.
This lasts about half an hour or something, but
You can get in a apartment building, you know somebody.
Right.
But think about it like this. You've got volunteers. Do you want them trying to follow a voter file and drop lit at this door and then 2 doors down and then 2 doors down and trying to get into buildings? Or do you want them on the phone calling people and actually talking to voters, right? You don't, my opinion is, don't do a lit drop unless you've got hundreds of volunteers. And if you can raise the money to do a mailing, it's much more powerful. Much more powerful.
I mean, one thing I think with the Green Party in New York State is that we tend to start the phone calls too late in the season. I would start that much earlier,
Oh, yeah.
especially because in New York City you get problems with the doors. A couple other things in terms of identifying supporters. Try to get your volunteers to sit down with the voter registration list in their immediate neighborhoods and have them identify 25 to 50 people who they know and write a postcard to them that you collect. Because they'll tell you, I don't know anybody in the neighborhood. But if you actually make them sit there and go through a list of people in the neighborhood, oh yeah, I worked with him 5 years ago. I went to church with him. He's in my union. And it's amazing how many people they know once you compile this list. When you do go door to door, I know you can do the 1, 2, and 3, or 4 or 5, but I always try to keep track of the issues that they talk about. 2 minutes is hard. But so so when you talk to him next, he's very interested. She's very interested in utilities, or police protection, so you can get back to it. And I also ran across this in one of the campaigns I ran. The candidate, when door knock, and talk to somebody, would send them a postcard the next few days and say, "Dear Bill, really nice to meet you, and I agree with you on housing," or stuff like that. I remember the last real big race I ran was actually one of the NATO races, and I thought I did a pretty good job. I got, I think, 12% of the vote as a Green in the election. But I was really surprised when I called up all these people I had really nice conversations with. They couldn't remember who I was. They kind of actually remember I was there to talk about Ralph Nader, but they couldn't remember that I was talking about my name. And so I think actually sending that postcard right afterwards, not going to solve it, but might increase the likelihood they remember who I was. So otherwise, there was some nice politician guy. I kind of agreed with them. He was green, red, blue. I don't really remember.
Yeah. I mean, the ideal is on election day, you have actually identified every single voter who's going to vote for you, and you know that number is your target number, right? Not necessarily the easiest thing to do. You don't want to, on election day, not have any idea what you're going to get, right? You want to be confident that you know exactly who's going to vote for you and you have enough votes. That's the ideal, right? So when you talk to a voter, you want to mark them and say, strong for me, leans towards me, undecided, or probably shouldn't talk to that person again because it's a waste of my time, right? So who do you want to keep talking to on this list? We've already gotten rid of 4 and 5. I would say 2 and 3, right? 1, you don't need to convince anymore. You want to remind them on, the day before they can vote to turn out for you or say, did you already vote for me? Okay. 2, you want to actually push into the 1 category, and 3, you want to pull in, right? Because there might be a lot of people who've never heard of the Green Party, so they have to read about you, or they have to wait until they get your really nice, content-rich lit piece, that kind of thing.
When you do talk to a voter, what is the one thing you have to ask each voter?
You're ready to vote.
Yes, you have to ask them for your vote.
Yeah.
Will
Are you going to
vote
vote for me?
Can you, can I count on your support? Something that you feel comfortable with. And, but you have to make that request.
What's
We
the
cannot
second
do
most thing you have to ask everybody? If they say yes, they're going to vote for you.
Can you get someone else to vote for you?
And that's
Your
good.
contact, your name, contact.
Yes. I would also even say, can I count on your financial support, right? Because you have to give people the opportunity to say no. But if you never ask, maybe they don't even know you need money, right?
One of the things how he got 49% of the vote rather than 51% of the vote, he did not have enough contact information with people who said,
You
I'm
said
voting
yes.
for you.
Mhm.
Even people taking the yard signs. And at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, on a cold, dark, rainy, stormy night, we had all these people who were ones who had not yet voted. And, we were sending people out in the cars to go to their door, but, we did not have their phone number. And I think you should have gone the weekend before and reminded them, but also try to get that piece of information so you can contact them. It was probably 40% of the ones we did not have their phone number for on election day.
Yeah. As a candidate, carry a pen around, right? Because people will say, oh, I'm going to vote for you. And you're like, okay, what's your number? Because I'm going to call you. They're fine with that. Yeah, that's a very good point. It's a very good point.
So this should all be done in the beginning. In other words,
Absolutely, from the very beginning.
From day 1 to day 365.
petitioning don't start until June and July, so.
I've even started on New Year's Day, actually, in some of my races. I go and door knocking, 3 feet of snow up in the mountains. They remember you when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, if you want to get through the whole district, it's,
Yeah. And you do need to raise the money, and probably thousands of dollars, just to be on an even playing
That's
field.
my next question.
But that's not this workshop, though.
Yeah.
We can talk about it afterward if we get through everything. But this identifying your supporters and raising money, it's exactly the same thing. That's why having a great database is if you don't have a great database, you're starting at such a disadvantage.
So in talking about that great database, you've got to recruit someone who knows databases.
Absolutely.
And that was a problem. That guy Hawkins again, he got this debt. They couldn't figure out how to convert the file they got into the file they were using. And so we had people around the state calling up, I want to make phone calls for you, and they literally couldn't figure out how to get it into a format that allowed people around the state to make, and they were very organized. But you need to have gone through the whole thing, so you don't come to 2 weeks down before the election day and you run into a roadblock and you don't have the person power to solve it. You want to solve this before it becomes a crisis.
Yeah, I mean, the most successful campaigns have the most pre-planning. Like, the more of this you can do before you even announce, because you can cut all these phone lists, you can cut your walk list, you can do everything before you've announced, right? And that will save you a lot of headaches, right? Also, is there early voting here?
Not yet. They're talking about it.
Okay, so everybody has to vote on election day.
Well, there is absentee ballot.
Okay, so there's,
And you may remember Dave Lucier was the one candidate, Green Party election candidate, who was ahead on election night. had more votes than his opponent. He lost on the absentee ballots. He actually did a fairly good job on the absentee ballots, but the other side did better. There are 3 forms of absentee ballots. There's the permanent, there's the military, and there's for the election. You can get the permanent and the military right from the start. You got to work them. He did a mail-in to all of them, but you got to really work them a lot harder. You know, that was a difference in this particular election.
That's what I understand. What is permanent? Because when I saw the rolls in the election list, it said permanent voters. You know what I mean? Is that they live out of town somewhere, but they're using the address as a voter thing? Is that what that is?
No, because for instance, as some of you know, I live in Brooklyn, but I'm permanently registered to vote in Postonkill. It's my permanent home, and I do not qualify for a permanent absentee ballot. I have to reapply every year. So I think permanent or more people who maybe are in nursing homes. There's a very limited category of permanent. You can get the permanent and you can get the military right from the start, but you got to keep track of those absentee ballots throughout the, probably once a week with about 2 months ago, and then once every 2 or 3 days with about 2 weeks to go.
Well, I don't know how soon you can cast your absentee ballot here. Is it like a month out?
About what, a month, 3 weeks?
3 weeks, 3 weeks.
Well, you should know that date because that is really the day the election starts. Okay, so
This is maybe 2 weeks.
if you are going to send out a mailing, which is crucial, it needs to hit mailboxes before people get their absentee ballot. Otherwise, absentee voters always vote. They tend to be older. Maybe they didn't see your website or social media or whatever. You don't want to lose the absentee vote because your mailing got there a week later.
Who are Green Party voters overall?
Students.
Students.
How do you get-
And they're not coming home. They're voting by absentee ballot.
How do you get the list?
You can buy it from the university.
When you go to your local board election, you say,
I want the absentee ballot
But you do
list.
that. You do that a month before?
I'd start 3 months before.
As
and
soon
just
as
keep
possible.
on updating it. And then when you get closer to the election, every 2 or 3 days you ask for it.
Then I send the mailing out to people or something? Or
Yeah.
Does it go to where they are, or does it go to their home address?
Where they are.
Wherever the absentee ballot is sent is where your piece of lit should go.
So I can say, hey, send it to Johnson and Wales University, for example, in
Right.
Providence, or Madison, Wisconsin,
Yes.
somewhere.
And those military guys are more liberal than you think.
Oh, yeah.
Don't run off the military.
No, definitely.
I'm definitely.
So that's really important that you actually make sure that your lit piece gets to the absentee voter.
And also, of course, get the new list of newly registered voters.
Yes.
Now, you won't have voter history with them, but, you need to keep track of them, and
Here's the
especially
problem.
younger people you may want to talk
Here's the
to.
problem with New York State. The Central Board of Elections in Albany, that oversees the 62 counties, updates it all the time. But some local Board of Elections, like where I live in Nassau County, they don't update it until like months later or so, or it's not the same match as what it is for the New York State database.
Right.
Like you.
So who do you talk to at the county board of election?
I talk to clerks.
Which one? You don't talk to the clerk. Who do you talk to?
I talk.
You talk to the Republican commissioner, because the Republicans think that we're going to steal votes from the Democrats. So the Republicans will help us.
Well, I know.
They might even sell you their voter
I know all
file, to be
of them.
honest.
I know all of them. I have a rapport with all the clerks on both sides because I deal with them on almost a daily basis.
Right. Well, you got to develop a relationship. You got to find one person who's going to give you the stuff.
Yeah. So the last 4 days before the campaign, you've already taken care of the absentee. Like you mailed them, you called them before they voted. It's called Go TV or Get Out the Vote, right? This is a real hard push. During this time, you're contacting all of your ones and twos and threes. If you get through the ones and twos and you know they voted for you, then you go on to the threes, right?
And when you call those 102s, what are you telling them?
Will you vote for me?
And what else are you telling them?
Don't forget to vote for me. I'm
Where the Green Party name is on the ballot.
Roll back.
I used to say, go in to vote, before you go to vote, kneel down and pray, and then look up and vote, because we're gonna be right there at the bottom, the hardest place to find.
Oh, really?
But it's,
Okay.
you know, you gotta tell them where we are.
We were supposed to be road F, but they moved my road.
Right, they love you.
Well, they did very.
They moved it to G or something like that, where we used to be many years ago. But-
Yeah. Ask, you can say, did you vote for me? If they say yes, great. You can say, did you tell 10 of your friends? You know, and they say, no, but I'll do that. You know, then you have a reason to, whatever. You can say, give me the names of your friends who are voters. The other thing, if they haven't voted for you, say, do you know where your polling place is? You know, they might not know.
Do you need a ride?
Do you need a ride? Or do you need childcare? Like, why aren't you voting? Why are you, you know, what's going on, right? And, you know, make that happen. Okay, so this part here requires a lot of volunteer power. I mean, think about it. You have to call through thousands of people in a couple days. So you want to make sure that all your volunteers know they're going to be on call for that
And
whole
when did you
time.
ask them that?
Way before this.
Way before.
So you say,
Your
mark your
first
calendar.
meeting, whatever you do, you're working for us on election day.
Mhm.
Tell the boss now you're taking
The day off, yeah.
election day,
On
the
poll.
most important day.
On the poll, the thing is, the day of election day also, when you have your poll watchers, they have poll clerks that have wrote everyone's names down, so you'll know, you check. You give them a copy also, you give them a carbon copy, and they'll write it down for you, or you'll have a poll watcher standing there writing down names. Now, here's the problem though. New York State just adopted the assembly 128 to 0, I think it was A050. Are you familiar with it? About poll watchers, certain candidates can't be poll watchers now or something? Did you hear about that?
Poll watchers are what?
Poll watchers, in certain elections, certain candidates can't be poll watchers.
That's the assembly, so that's agreed to it yet?
The assembly voted 128 to 0, it was on March 18th.
Doesn't mean anything, what did the Senate vote?
I don't know, but are you familiar with that bill?
Nope.
Why have a poll watcher? I mean, in your opinion.
Because they watch, you know, check to make sure the machines are all right, make sure
What can you do at that time, though?
you observe the counting. I don't know how they do the computers, so.
I just,
Yeah, in general, you don't want to, you want people to go in and check the voting list. You do not want them sitting in the poll. So they want to be a poll watcher so they can go in and look at the list. They should come back every 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
And of course, when you want to have this fight is at 6:30 in the morning and at 7:30 in the morning when nothing else is going on. And they're going to be really nasty at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Because they're high on their caffeine from the coffee. You know, by 9 o'clock, they're like, you want a donut? You know, they become your friends. But you want to establish the principle early on that you have access to that list of voters. So you're not fighting this at 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you need it. If you gotta bring the Board of Elections in, you want to bring them in early, not late in the game.
I don't understand the function. You're saying a poll watcher should be there early to check the list. Why?
Well, in other words, what you want to do is in your election district, you know, there's 100 election districts in your election. Each election district, you want to create a list of your 1s, 2s, and 3s in alphabetical order. So you say, I've identified 70 people who I believe are going to vote for me. And if only 40 of them at 4 o'clock have voted for you, you're going to focus on those 30 people from 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, and you're going to get them to the polls.
you,
Then
you can compare.
You want them at the poll to check out who showed up.
Yes.
Right.
And then the people who are absent, you go after them. And you-
Correct.
Yes.
You can also have people 100 foot from the poll watching, which is not so big in New York City, but works other places, to talk to the voters at the 100-foot line. Because in a lot of elections, I'm going to vote for the mayor, or I'm going to vote for the governor. We have a city council election? Really? You're running? Or, you know, so the lower level races, handing out literature at the 100-foot line works. Does not work to help Jill Stein, not work for Howard Watkins for governor, because people know who they're voting at the top.
Yeah.
But if there's 20 races on the ballot, it's a good chance no one really knows anything about your race. I mean, one of the races I ran in, we were the biggest story in the Capital District, literally for 4 months. It was on every single day. There was a newspaper article about this race for state assembly. Every single day for 4 months. And when I did the last minute voter calls, half the people had no idea there was even an election.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
think there's saturation, but
there isn't, right? So a lot of people focus a lot of time on getting in the media. Honestly, most voters, that's lost. That's why my biggest priority is just sending them your own media directly to their door, right? Because you know they got it, you know they're gonna at least look at it. They see what you want them to see. So if you're gonna do mailings, and you really have to, don't wait until the last minute. These take a long time to lay out. They take a long time to get content, get nice pictures. I mean, all this stuff. I would take a really nice mailing, like one of the ones that Ben did for his campaign, and just copy it, right? Or have somebody who you know can put together a nice piece. So you find a designer. There are programs like InDesign, Illustrator, things like that you can use in the Adobe suite. Maybe you can get a student to do it as part of their class project or something who already knows these programs. Find a union printer. That's huge. I'm sure in New York that's huge. You got to have the union bug on your lit. No?
Well, it is huge, but there are no good union printers in New York
Really?
City. Yes.
Okay. Well, usually.
I'm actually told that the best union printer for New York City is in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes, it is
And
actually.
they ship it back to New York City.
So if you want to find the mailing house and the printer, talk to me. I can help you out. You want to get a bulk rate mailing house, which also means you need time because bulk rate takes longer than first class. So.
You should know the red tag election materials, at least in New York State,
Mhm.
it's red tag, but.
Yep, they do that. They do that in Madison
I
too.
guess that's probably Pixel is national. I guess.
Yeah. And so this whole process of creating a nice mailing and actually getting it to somebody's door can take 3 weeks, right? So, or longer, right? So you don't want to wait until, oh my gosh, absentee ballots go out like in a week. Don't do that.
You know, one thing on your design, you want your design to reinforce each other.
Mhm.
We may differ how many pieces of literature you're going to put out, and everybody wants buttons, and everybody wants a yard sign. But you want to look for your campaign so that when they see this, oh, that's the green guy, or that's Sarah's, you know, so each material so that reinforces one another with the color, with the look, with the design, with the logo. So you want that early rather than late.
Mhm.
Once again, that's something, if you don't want to be door knocking on New Year's Day, you can be figuring out your design when you
Right.
have time.
Yeah, and definitely brand yourself Green Party, right? I mean, that's what makes you, that's why people are going to vote
Color
for you.
green, that's right.
Yes. The color doesn't have to necessarily be green, especially since now a lot of Democrats and Republicans are using green. Okay, so here's the sample voter contact plan. We say the expected vote is 3,800 people. The vote goal is 2,000, 52.5% of the expected vote. We want to contact 75% of that up here, and that's 2,850. The number of doors in our universe, which is 75% of this number here, our contact goals, which is 2,140. Passes on the door 2, that would leave a total number of doors as 4,280, right? 4,280. That would mean if you were doing 20 doors an hour, it'd be 214 total hours. And then you can like back up from the beginning, from election day to how far out you have to start. If you were doing 20 hours of door knocking per week, and then you were doing another 10 of events and 10 of actually calling donors and asking for money, you can plan out every single day. So when you wake up in the morning, you shouldn't be like, what am I doing today as a candidate? You should be like, here's exactly what I'm doing today.
I am not writing a press release. I am not writing a piece of campaign literature.
Mhm.
I'm not doing the issue research. I'm not running this over to the printer. And even, you know, when I ran for office, I had a kid. You're not even doing childcare. And the wife, of course, doesn't agree with that. But you can actually recruit campaign volunteers to do childcare. It's better
Cook
for you to
meals
go-
for you, everything. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, you can bring your kid on the door with you if they're old enough. But, you know,
Yeah.
that gets old pretty quickly.
So if you have a plan like this, you're gonna be set, right? You won't be the frazzled candidate. You'll be the candidate on a mission, right? To just get through the numbers. And if you do this kind of thing and you identify your voters, you will win, or you will actually do way better than you would have otherwise without a plan. So, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Honestly, I made most of my comments already. I mean, one thing, of course, you can be doing is trying to get people to endorse your candidacy. And, you know, that's nice. I will say the media tends to give you a little blurb in the newspaper to get an endorsement. But what you really want when people give you an endorsement is you want a list of their members and supporters in your district. And you want them to do a mail-in on your behalf, and you want them to contact the people, and, you know. So it's nice to get the endorsement, but you want them to do something with it. And, you know, you want them, will you give me 2 days of door knocking? You know, will you take a team out on 2 weekends? Or will you give me one weekend of door knocking, 1 weekend of, you know, phone banking? You know, what we do here in New York, I don't do this in Wisconsin, you know, we do try to, in our last minute, get out the vote literature to show people where we are on the ballot. I always tell people the first election I ran for in 1982, I ran as a Citizens Party candidate. And I was doing literature at the 100-foot mark, and this guy stops me. I love you. I really love the Citizens Party. I really love Barry Commoner. You got my vote. Don't worry. And I said, it's really hard to find our name on the ballot. Here's the ballot. Count in there. And the first thing you do is vote for me, because you're not going to be able to find it. And he doesn't come out for 20 minutes. And so I know he's had a hard time. He goes, I couldn't find your name. But at least I voted for the nuclear freeze referendum. And I said, well, we don't actually have referendums in New York State. So the Republican candidate created an independent ballot line called nuclear freeze. So you voted for the Republican in the race. You know, so you do want to remind people where they vote for you. The door knocking is critical. You got to spend the time in door knocking. You got to really keep track of those goals. And I know it was on the PowerPoint, but I don't know if you mentioned it. You got to update your database on a regular basis. Don't let that get too far behind. Now, I was in New Paltz, and some people may know New Paltz is strange in terms of the Greens in New Paltz. But one of the big guys in the Greens in New Paltz had worked for John Hall, who was running for Congress. And so he showed me the door knocking stuff they were using. I'd never seen it, probably Wisconsin, been doing it for 20 years. But what they actually did was they had people, it was like, you know those standardized tests in high school? And so they had people's name, everything was barcoded, and you had a little pencil, and you penciled things in terms of whether they 1, 2, or 3, what issue they supported, and they just fed the whole thing to a scanner and right into the database. Wow. When will the Green Party be at that level?
Now we have smartphones, where you just go up to a door and here's an example of Vote Builder.
I will say one thing. I do think when you ask people to make phone calls, and this was not something that was very good in the Jill Stein campaign, in my opinion, you gotta make it easy for people. I did phone calls for something, and I had to watch 2 15-minute videos that Michael O'Neill had put together and pull this down and put this down. And after an hour, I said, I can't do this. Michael, can you just give me 30 names and I'll call? Which he did. But don't allow the techies of the world to overwhelm your volunteer. You got to find the right balance between the two of them. The bottom line is going to be simple for the volunteers to use.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, right? Absolutely. You don't want to have your grandpa or whatever. You don't want to have your grandparent trying to fill this out if they're not tech savvy.
Well, I'm not quite yet a grandparent. I thought I was somewhat computer savvy, but it was just like, And actually, it didn't work, you know. There was clearly a problem with the setup, but it took an hour of playing with it to figure that out.
Honestly, I think Nation Builder has the voter file or a voter file plugged in to Nation Builder, right? So let's say you don't use Vote Builder. I'm pretty sure Nation Builder now just recently has incorporated this type of information into their service. But you can create lists based on all kinds of things, right? Location, age, from, say, if you're putting out a mailing to older voters, say 55 to 99. You know, activist codes, let's see what they got here.
Is Vote Builder free?
No, you have to pay for it. So I had to pay $500 because it's by vote. My district's 250,000 people, right? Voter file record. You know, there's all kinds of stuff that
Michael,
you
we
can.
had that in New York?
Wow.
Well, it's Democratic Party of Wisconsin, right? But they will sell it to Green Party candidates. But it's like pretty much what everybody uses. And they only sell me my seat here. So they don't give you like the entire list. Let's see, go to my list. So I sent out a mailing to 8,900 mailboxes, right? And here's a list I created. And you can see here likely parties, strong down, lean down, their age, their phone number. So in a race where you have this kind of information, it makes it really easy because you can just go through and call people. You know, if you have to figure out like match phone numbers to names, that's more challenging. It's also nice because you can download the file of addresses and send it right to your mailing house. And so Nation Builder is, if you've never seen it before, oops. This is what Jill Stein for president used in part. And I think it's, yeah, free voter file right here. So I haven't used their service, but I've heard good things about it.
Is it like freeform.org or something?
It's nationbuilder.com. And yeah, I'm not sure. No, apparently it's totally integrated into their system now. Or you could import your own voter file. So maybe you can get the CD from whoever here, the county clerk, and actually upload it into this and see if their names match your names.
I tried uploading election materials and everything. The file was way too big for the computer to handle.
Well, you probably need a specialized data person, like who just, that's all they do, who knows how to convert from Excel to CV.
Yeah, we should see whether the state party can do it and try to do it statewide.
Yeah.
This guy in Nassau County that used to be, he was one of the original members of the state. He was given Harry Hallman's campaign. He's a tech person, pure tech guy.
Yes. Any other questions about this? Yeah.
So this is all very well and good. Candidates who are running to win, which very low candidates to do, they have no resources, raise the resources. My impression, though, is that among the candidates in New York City that running this year, those that I know, I don't think you can classify them as being, by your definition, serious candidates running to win.
I just mean running to win.
Well, serious candidates running to win, don't they?
I think you can be serious and not win.
All right, there can be other objectives.
Yeah.
So, to get to my question, for those who can't raise, off the top of my head, certainly tens of thousands to do a mailing to every prime voter in even a city council district. So those are not going to be doing a race on a real shoot, say under 2,000. What would you recommend? Let's do it, say, for a defensive purpose, to show the Green Party flag, to show that, hey, we're not going to hijack online. We're here. We're still here. What would you recommend on a shoot screen just to stand for election?
Well, I'm sure you have thoughts too. I think you still want to talk to voters and get as many votes
Right.
as you can. So maybe if you can't mail the entire district, I would mail as many people as you can, right? And you can be educational as well, but that's a challenging question because I want everybody who runs to win, right?
So what?
And
Just being realistic.
no, I understand. I think Green Party candidates can raise more money than they think they can and get more votes than they think they can, right? I know pretty much any candidate who sits through and calls voters will raise hundreds of dollars a day. Especially since Green Party candidates are basically talking about issues that people care about that they don't hear about from other people. Just because somebody may vote Democrat doesn't mean they might not give you money. So,
Not everybody's like one fundraiser.
right. Well, you have to be if you want to be a candidate.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, in most of my races, I've been able to raise as much as my opponent, if not more. And I don't have rich friends. I have political friends. The one exception was my first race, which was for Congress, and not so well the county executive. That was more that the two major parties dumped party money in. But in terms of the actual candidates, I was able to imagine. The trick to fundraising is to ask, and ask often, and ask again. If you're not going to be able to run a campaign that's going to have win on election day, you should always define what your win is and make it worthwhile and try to achieve that. Or also look, I can't win this year, or we can't win this year in this district, but maybe we can win 4 years from now or 5 years from now. And what do I need to get to each level to move up to that level to win in 4 years? Or you're looking at the national state party, we need 50,000 votes next year for governor. New York City always does worse. Last election we got 10,000 votes in New York City and 52,000 votes outside of New York City for Harry Watkins. But say, well, my district will try to get 500 identified Green supporters. Create a target number of people that are core Green Party people that you identify, you put into a database, and so when you start the next election, you have 500 people or 1,000 people, whatever you think is a credible goal, that you build upon. And you can hand off to the next person. Here are 1,000 people you can start your campaign with.
Yeah, and even I found in my race, people who would not publicly endorse me gave me their entire list, of all their list, right? And so definitely ask people for their list if they're too cowardly to endorse you. They might say, I love you, I think you're great, your opponent's terrible. Their list is really valuable.
I've had people, Democratic council people, even Republican challengers, former Republican challengers, come to me and say, you know what, I'm voting for you. I had a judge in Glen Cove, becoming judge, who came around with a former, who was campaigning on behalf of who was the former city councilman.
Right.
Guy named John.
Well, that's good.
Republicans.
But you want the guy with the 2 kids and
Yeah.
the spouse I'm going to vote for you. Say, great. What's your name? What's your address? What's your phone number?
Yeah.
Your family.
Are you interested in running next time? Can I give you 50 pieces of literature you're going to hand out over the last weekend? Can I come by next Thursday and maybe introduce 20 people in the neighborhood to me? Will you host a house party for me? A house gathering. Get them to do something. Get them to take that next step.
Well, I tried, I couldn't get, when you had the things for statewide candidates, the closed envelope and all that. I had to figure out, how do you do that? You go to a printer, or you tell them I want a sample like that?
Yeah, you have your designer do it.
A printer will do that?
Yes, they'll do that. They have that, the rip-off piece that the standard. You can also just do a regular envelope too.
Yeah, rip-off is often almost more expensive. So you do something.
Yeah.
It's one where they.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Right.
Because you've sent out, for Howie Home,
Yeah.
you've sent out a few of those. And I was trying to figure out how much was that? How much would you say that was?
I don't know, we had a meal at our house and
They always are a couple $1,000s, really, no matter what you're doing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, for direct mail, I think we were down 50, 60 cents. That was a direct mail. For a candidate, I mean, it's best you can put it in an envelope, but that's more expensive. I put together a meal in one night for county executive, which was 18,000 pieces. But all it was a brochure, it was a foldover, and this was a long time ago. But, just basically taking the mailing label and we just slapped it on the mail, and it had it was bulk class, and we had paid somebody to sort out the address labels, 18,000 address labels by the zip code sort needed for the post office to do the bulk mail. But, we did it ourselves to save the money. We must have 20 volunteers. It took us about 6 hours. Got 18,000 pieces out.
I mean, the other way you could define a win is by shifting the entire debate to something that you want to talk about, right? So instead of saying the debate being about what schools are we going to close, the debate instead becomes, are we going to tax the wealthy in this district, or are we going to have a minority staff hiring and recruitment plan? Something that the other candidates would have never talked about, but now the community is concerned about and expects whoever wins to address, right? You can do that, and that could be a win whether you have a ton of money or not, Are you going to say something?
Oh, it was a comment about the vendors. I run a couple of times and I've got a matching, and you really have to be careful about vendors, because when you have $100,000 in your pocket, everybody is going to sell you some service that will be the magic bullet to get you elected.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to get money out of your hands.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've had the most horrible experiences with mailings. If there's a god of the mailings, he's not my friend, or she's not my friend. I'll give you one example, and this is very dangerous, I think, for Green Party candidates or anybody. Like, I went to a major vendor that does mailings in New York City. I had 5 mailings or 6. One of them was an attack ad. And, they create the mailing, everything in return for getting the discount, and they keep the difference for the bulk mailing. But they refused to mail the attack ad. They refused. And I couldn't get them to mail it. And I was like, I'm paying you, just do it. And I talked to the designer, the graphic designer, young kid out of college, and he basically whispered to me, well, our biggest contractor is the head of the Democratic Party that he found, and he's reviewing your mailings, and he doesn't want you to mail this mailing out.
Okay, so you should
should
use this one, Wells Printing. This is the one that Congressman Pocan uses. This is the one this is in Madison, Wisconsin.
I used a mailer from, I think the next time I used a mailer from Colorado or something like that. And everything seemed fine. I thought there would be no influence from New York, and I was just being paranoid. But all 4 mailings arrived on the same day, late on election day or something like that. It was a complete utter disaster. I never want to do another mailing in my life. It makes me almost never again.
Yes.
But I've had those experiences with mailings.
Well, I mean, there's more campaigns you run, you find the vendors you trust and you develop a relationship with them.
Well,
you understand the language and the questions, and be firm about deadlines. I need this drop by so-and-so. And, know what the timeline is. You need it on the door by a certain date. When it need to be at the post office. To be at the post office, when does that have to be printed? And you keep on working backwards to get that. That's what campaign plan is about.
Right. And I did that.
You can always call or email the Green Party, and they nationally. My email.
Nationally? Who?
I was gonna say mine or Ben's. My email is sarahmanski@gmail.com. sarahmanski@gmail.com. And ask me what's the printer, or what's,
Yeah, I mean, we have, Howie has a printer he uses, Miller House in Syracuse. We have one in the Capital District we're pretty happy with. Michael and Gloria have been using one on Long Island, which has been okay.
And where Hicks was that? I mean, I saw it, post office.
I don't know where, you have to ask Gloria who it is and stuff.
Because I'd like to go there personally, if you could tell me if they have a
Yeah,
phone
and
number.
ask Michael Gloria. I like the guy in the Capital District, because I mean, you know them for 20 years. Everybody else found them a pain in the neck. These things like this. Of course it's a union printer. That's part of the challenge.
so we're out of
I will
time.
say,
Okay.
in one campaign I ran for county executive, we must have 10, 15 pieces of literature, all union bug. My campaign manager and the lease printer said, I want to do one with soy ink on chlorine-free paper. And my God, all my union buddies are still yelling at me 20 years later. I remember you had a mail about that party with the union bug on it.
Yeah,
I said,
don't not have the union.
I said,
bug.
didn't you see the soy ink in the chlorine-free paper? No, we did not. We're not
Yes. All right, thank you for coming.